Hi, I'm Janae Devika with Cafe Janae, and we're here at the beautiful lodge at Morel Ranch in Gallatin, Missouri. Welcome to our kitchen. We're going to show you how to make some energy bars that are healthy and filling, satisfying, and they're super simple to make. Usually energy bars have sugar and hydrogenated oil and corn syrup and other chemicals and additives in the energy bars that make them not that good for you. Even the ones that claim to be healthy really aren't that healthy. But it's easy just to make them at home. And if you make a big batch and put them in the refrigerator, you've got energy bars for later. This is one of those things, if you prepare ahead of time, you can always have a snack on hand when you're on the go to put in your desk at work or in the car or pack in a lunch for the kids. This is a great way to just be prepared. Make something healthy, maybe on a weekend in advance, and then you've always got something to grab, and you won't be tempted to grab junk food or candy bars instead. The base of these energy bars is going to be a mixture of raw nuts. In here I've put pecans, almonds, walnuts, hazelnuts, and what we've done is we've soaked the nuts ahead of time for several hours and then rinsed and drained them. The reason we soak nuts is because nuts are covered with phytic acid and enzyme inhibitors. What that does is it blocks the absorption and the digestion of the nuts, and sometimes it makes you feel kind of sick to your stomach. The way to combat that is just soak the nuts, and that dissolves all those enzyme inhibitors and the phytic acid off the nuts, and then you can digest them much better, and the nutrients are more readily available for you to assimilate in your body. We're also going to use some buckwheat. Now, there's two kinds of buckwheats. There's raw buckwheat and toasted buckwheat. We're just going to use the raw kind of buckwheat. And with buckwheat, you also soak it, and it just makes it more digestible. And it also makes it softer, so as we blend it, it becomes the right texture. Then we're going to use some maple syrup. Now, there's several kinds of maple syrup you can buy in the store. The worst kind, of course, is corn syrup that has maple flavoring in it. That's the kind that's not that good for you. Then there's grade A and grade B maple syrup. Grade A is a lighter maple syrup with a lighter flavor. Grade B has more of a maple taste, and it's thicker and darker and has a better mineral content to it. Just make sure, if you can, to get it organic, then you won't have the pesticide residue that comes with the conventional maple syrup. We're also going to use some dried cranberries. Now, if you go to your local health food store, many times they can order you dried cranberries that are not sweetened with sugar but are sweetened with apple juice. These are a lot better for you because, of course, we're trying to avoid sugar and corn syrup, which makes the nutrient content go down if there's sugar in there. We're also going to use some fresh lemon juice, some fresh lemon zest, some orange zest, orange flavoring. The orange flavoring is just an essential oil of orange. You can get these at the health food store. If you don't have a health food store nearby, you can just use orange extract. Now, with the orange extract, you have to use a little bit more. With the essential oil, it's very, very concentrated and potent, so make sure that you just use it a few drops at a time. Test it out. The recipe calls for 3 tablespoons of orange extract. If you're using the essential oil instead, just put a few drops in and work your way up so you don't overpower the recipe with orange flavor. And we're also going to be using vanilla and stevia. Stevia can be used as a sweet enhancer, so you don't want to use stevia for your only sweetener, but what you do is you take whatever sweetener you're using, in this case maple syrup, and instead of using a cup of maple syrup for this recipe, we're just going to use a half a cup. So we cut it in half, and then we enhance that with stevia. That way you only have half the sugar content, but it still tastes just as sweet. It's a nice little trick to use to cut down on the carbohydrates and the sugars in your recipe. And we're going to be using some raw dates, and these have also been soaked ahead of time, and that's just to make them soft so they blend up really easy. Sometimes dates, when they get dried out, they're a little bit hard to blend. And we're going to use some raw apples. This mixture is going to make a nice dough, and then we'll make some energy bars out of that. Now, we start out with the food processor, and because this is going to make a large batch, the intent is to make enough so that you can pack it away in the fridge and you always have a healthy snack on hand so you're not tempted to eat junk food. So it might take several batches of the food processor to blend all this up. So all you're going to do is just fill the food processor about 2/3 full. You don't want to overwhelm the capacity. We'll blend this, and then just little by little, we'll start putting everything in there, and we'll mix it together in this bowl. Okay. Now you'll notice that I didn't blend them up so much that they turn into a paste. It's just kind of a fine grind, so they're just loosely ground in tiny pieces. If you grind them too small, it'll kind of turn it into a paste or a mush. We don't want that. We want some hearty texture for our energy bars. We'll just dump this in the bowl and repeat until all of our nuts are ground up. So that took 2 batches to get all those nuts ground up. And then we'll grind up the buckwheat the same way. We're just going to grind it until it's a nice fine blend, but not turning it into paste. All right, when I first did this recipe, I only used the nuts and the fruit, and I found that if I add a little buckwheat to it, it really lightens up the texture, and it makes it so it's not quite so heavy. And the buckwheat also adds a lot of fiber and a lot of nutrients to the energy bars that I really like. So if you don't like the buckwheat, you can leave it out, but I really like to add it in. Now after we've blended up the nuts and the buckwheat, we're going to use the apples and the dates and the rest of our ingredients to make a syrup that's going to hold all the good ingredients together. So we've got some cored apples, dates, which are very high in minerals and lots of good vitamins. We've got our lemon juice to give it a little bit of tartness. Maple syrup to make it nice and sweet. I really love the combination of maple syrup and the orange flavor. It's just a really great combination. Then we're going to sprinkle in a little bit of stevia. Now, depending on which kind of stevia you get, you'll put in different amounts. So this is stevia extract with nothing else added to it, which means 1/40 of a teaspoon of stevia extract is the same as a teaspoon of sugar. So you only use a pinch. If you use regular stevia, it has other things added to it like maltodextrin to extend it, so then that makes it so you can use 1 teaspoon of stevia to substituting for 1 teaspoon of sugar. But this is the extract, which is why I don't use very much. Just keep that in mind so you don't overwhelm your recipe with stevia if you don't know which kind it is. We're also going to add about a teaspoon of salt. Remember, anytime you have a sweet dish, sometimes balancing it out with a little bit of salt really enhances the flavor. And some vanilla. About a tablespoon of vanilla. Here's our orange essential oil, or you can use your orange extract there. Lemon zest. Orange zest. And we'll put a little bit more maple syrup in there. Okie doke, I think we're ready to blend away. Okay, after you've let that blend long enough to make it nice and smooth and creamy, you're making a thick syrup. We can go ahead and taste it and see if the flavor balance is correct. Great. What you're looking for is a nice sweet taste. You want to be able to taste the orange, and you want to have enough salt to balance out the sweet flavor, and I think that tastes amazing. Now all we're going to do is put this in this large bowl, mix the buckwheat and the nuts up together so everything's nicely mixed. This is one of those fun recipes you can get your hands in. I love making this recipe with kids because they just get their hands in the recipe, mix it up, make a mess. It's really fun. And that also teaches them to get involved with their food, and and then they're more willing to eat healthy. So we've mixed that up. We're going to pour in the syrup, and then we'll just use our hands to stir it. I can really smell the orange flavor. The orange and the maple mixed together is just amazing. And when we add the cranberries, this recipe is going to be fantastic. I find that if I eat lots of protein, which you've got nuts and buckwheat in here with lots of protein, and if I always have a healthy snack on hand, I'm just not tempted to eat unhealthy things anymore. So this is a great way to do that. All right, let's mix this up, and then we'll add our cranberries in the end. Very fun and tactile experience. All right, so as the reason why we're using raw nuts, raw seeds, raw buckwheat, raw apples, raw dates, is because raw nutrition really helps your body to be healthier. Raw means you haven't cooked the ingredients above 115 degrees. 115 degrees seems to be the magic point where enzymes and vitamins seem to, that's their cutoff point, that's their threshold. So heat-sensitive vitamins like vitamin C and your enzymes, vitamin B, vitamin A, all of those vitamins, if you get them above 115 degrees, they really start to deteriorate and a lot of your nutrition is lost. So raw food merely means that you haven't processed your food above 115 degrees. So we've used all raw food that has not been processed above 115 degrees. And then what we're going to do is we're going to dehydrate this instead of cooking it so that we can retain all the nutrients of these energy bars. One thing about raw food, though, because it's so high in enzymes, you need to refrigerate it because it'll go bad really fast. So as long as you keep it in the refrigerator, these energy bars will keep good for weeks. But if you leave them on the counter, they'll only stay good for a matter of days. Now look at, this is a great batter. It looks kind of like cookie dough. You've got your cranberries in there. Now if you don't have a dehydrator, what you can do is turn your oven onto a very low temperature. So as low as your oven goes, usually that's 175 degrees. And you just put your energy bars on a sheet, spread it out on parchment paper like I'm going to show you how to do. And then you just put it in your oven at the lowest temperature possible. If that gets too hot, you can just crack the oven door open a little bit, and that will make it so that you are cooking your food at a low enough temperature so you can do that without the dehydrator. 1 second and I'll be back and we'll put it out on our sheet. Now it's time to spread the energy bars out on either a dehydrator sheet or a cookie sheet lined with parchment paper. Now again, if you don't have a dehydrator, that's okay. If you do, you're just going to dehydrate this at 115 degrees. If you don't have a dehydrator, just turn your oven down to the lowest temperature possible, crack the door open a little bit, and it'll be almost as good as a dehydrator. All we want to do is just spread this about 1/4 inch thin on the sheet, and then it will make a nice, it'll have a nice thickness so that it won't be too dry and it won't be too moist. It's really important to remember that the edges will cook faster than the middle, so you want to make the edges just slightly thicker than the middle for proper cooking or dehydrating, whatever the case may be. Now, my favorite way to eat these are good as is, but my favorite way to eat these is with chocolate sauce on top, of course, because I love chocolate sauce on everything. So we're going to cook these in a very low oven until they get nice and dry, so they'll be cooked and solid, but not quite hard. They won't be hard, they'll just be slightly crispy. And then we're going to put a nice chocolate sauce over the top of them. Okay, we've spread these out on our cookie sheet. We're just going to put them in the oven, the lowest temperature possible, and it'll probably take about an hour, maybe 2 hours, depending on your oven, until they're done. You'll know they're done when they get slightly crispy and you start to smell that really yummy orange aroma. Okay, we'll see you after they're done, and then we'll put some chocolate sauce on top. All right, we're back. we've let the orange cranberry energy bars either dry out in the dehydrator until they're nice and crisp, or we can put them in the oven for as long as it takes to get them crisp at the lowest temperature possible, so 150 to 175. And when they're done, I love to put a chocolate sauce on them. And the chocolate sauce is really easy to make, and it's a raw chocolate sauce, so you're going to get a high antioxidant, high nutrient profile with your chocolate sauce, plus it's going to taste fabulous. All I'm going to put in the chocolate sauce is some raw coconut oil, raw cocoa powder, some raw local honey, and some vanilla and a touch of salt. So that's all we need to put in there, and it's going to make the best chocolate frosting ever. Now, coconut oil melts at 76 degrees. So if it's warmer than 76 degrees, it will be liquid. If it's colder than that, it'll be solid like hard butter. So if your recipe calls for liquid coconut oil, all you need to do is warm the jar under warm tap water. You don't need to heat it up really hot or anything. Just put it under warm tap water and it'll melt till it's liquid. To this, we'll add the honey, get all the wet ingredients together, and then a little bit of salt. Anytime you make chocolate or sweet things, it's great to add a little salt just to give it that extra burst of flavor. And a little bit of vanilla. Then we'll just stir that up to get it nice and incorporated, and then add the chocolate powder just a little bit at a time. I find if I dump all the chocolate powder in there at once, it gets really clumpy, but if I just do it a little at a time and whisk it as I'm going, it turns into the proper consistency. Now again, raw chocolate powder is a superfood, which means it has really high antioxidant potential. It's very high in minerals and other nutrients. And the reason we want raw chocolate instead of processed chocolate is because when you heat process antioxidants like vitamin C, the heat kills them at about 115 degrees. So you don't want to heat process any of your raw food, and especially any of your superfoods, or else you really lose all that nutrient value that's potentially in them. Now notice how this is just turning into a nice stirrable chocolate sauce. I'm going to give this a taste, and what you want to taste for is, is it salty enough? Is it sweet enough? Is it too bitter? A lot of times people aren't used to the raw chocolate flavor because it's kind of a bitter chocolate taste. You might need to add an extra bit of sweetener to get used to the taste. That is really tasty. I think I'm going to add a little bit of stevia to it to enhance the sweetness. And I'm letting you watch me do this process because cooking is really an intuitive process. You can start out with the recipe, but you don't necessarily have to follow the recipe because everybody has different tastes and everybody has different things that they like. So I can give the same recipe to 5 different people, and they could change it just a little bit to their liking and come up with 5 different variations of that recipe that are equally good. So I'm giving you the base recipe, and then just kind of play around with it. Add a little extra salt, add a little extra stevia or honey, and just keep playing with it until you get it exactly how you like it. All right, whip it up. Now the cool thing about this frosting is right now it's liquid, which is the way we want it so we can stir it. But after it cools down, like if you put it in the refrigerator, it will become solid because that coconut oil, if it gets below 76 degrees, it will become solid. So now that it's nice and sweet, exactly how we want it, we're just going to pour some of the chocolate sauce on these bars. Spread it nice and thin. So this is kind of like, I use this for kind of like my Pop-Tart substitution. So in the morning, instead of grabbing a Pop-Tart or something unhealthy like that, you can grab these orange cranberry bars, which are so delicious and very healthy for you, and they're going to power you up for a day of energy and health. You can also take them on with you for snacks when you're camping or hiking or to work or school, wherever you want. And it's as easy as that. And what I do is I just cut it into bar to individual portion sizes, store it in the refrigerator for up to 2 or 3 weeks, and you've got an instant snack whenever you're ready to have one. I hope you've enjoyed learning how to make these cranberry orange energy bars. Join us again later. Thank you.